Good morning, everybody. My name is Paola Migliorini from University of Gastronomic Science, Italy, and I'm going to present about relation to territories for a diverse and resilient food system. The learning outcome of this class is to reflect and understand the role and importance of embedded food systems for the overall food system sustainability, with particular focus on diversity and resilience of the food system. This first class is focused on introduction about diversity, agrobiodiversity, and resilience in agro and food systems, and to reflect on how to improve them. As you all know, the diversity in agri-food system is going to be very simplified and reduced. The system is dominated by agrochemical corporation and fertilizer corporation, seed corporation that dominate from 70 to 90% of the whole market, and the large-scale farms control the majority of the land. And so in this linear system, there is no circularity, and there is several bottleneck about the diversity, and the alternative food system initiative are present even if they are a minority. From the variety point of view, in the world we observed after the Green Revolution a of modernity in terms of loss of agrobiodiversity. For example, in potato varieties, there are estimations that says that we lost 5,000 variety, and our market is now dominated by mainly 4 varieties from North Europe. The same observation, we can do it on apples variety. In less than 100 years, we lost 90% of the diversity in variety of apple. The same for maize. Everybody now, all the farmers grow very, let's say, field corn from very few variety, and the diversity that come from the Central and South America is going to be destroyed. But the same also for some horticultural crops like the simple lettuce. We lost variety of probably 90% of them, and the variety that now is more present on the market is iceberg because of its shelf lives. What is biodiversity? From a farming point of view, biological diversity means the variety among living organisms from all sources, including interareal, terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and the ecological complex of which they are part. This includes diversity within species, between species, and of ecosystem. This is the first very fundamental definition of what is biological diversity from the United Nations Summit on Earth in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, the CBD. Another definition from agroecologists, for example, Altieri, Van der Meer, and Perfecto, says that all plants, animals, and microorganisms which exist and interact inside an ecosystem. More recently, Maffei defined diversity of all life and all its manifestations, not only from biological point of view, but also from cultural and linguistic approach, which are interrelated within a complex socio-ecological adaptive system. We now know from anthropological studies that the more diverse the language is, in particular with dialect, the more diversity of varieties we have. Diversity can be classified according to scale in biomes, ecosystems, species, populations, variety, genome, and genes. And following this hierarchical approach, for example, there are many classifications of biome on our Earth. There are some authorities that says that there are 7 biomes, others that are 13. In this picture there are more. Anyhow, there are many biomes in our Earth, from semi-arid desert to subtropical or rainforest or mountain forest or temperate steppe, and so on and so forth, as well as Mediterranean. In fact, Mediterranean is, for example, a hot spot of diversity, is one of the most biologically rich areas, but also as well the threatened one. It counts 10% of the world's plants. There is an estimation that says that there are in the Mediterranean basin 25,000 species, and it's the result of the collision between Africa and Eurasia tectonic plates millions of years ago that created variability in the basin topography, climate, geography, and giving rise to an abundance of species and habitats. Nearly 300 mammal species live in Mediterranean, including monk seal and other primates, as well as more than 500 bird species, including 63% that are endemic and 40% of endemic reptile. But when we talk about do we know how many species we have on Earth? Unfortunately, no, but there are estimations. Most recent publication in 2011 conclude that at the moment, our taxonomic classification catalogs 1.2 million species, but the estimation says that we probably have roughly 9 million species on Earth, but 86% of land species and 91% of marine species remain undiscovered. This is in natural biodiversity. Do we know how many population among species do we have and how many varieties inside population? The answer is no. Regarding the agricultural and cultivated plant, I want to mention that in 1940, Nikolai Ivanovich Vavilov, a Russian agronomist, identified and studied 12 original centers for the domestication of plants, and he published a book, Origin, Variation, Immunity, and Breeding of Cultivated Plant. For this idea, he died under the Stalin domination because they didn't agree on his theory and also of the theory of the evolution of species for humans. Agrobiodiversity was defined by FAO in 1999 as the variety and variability of animals, plants, microorganisms on Earth that are important for food and agriculture, and which result from the interaction between the environment, genetic resource, and management systems and practice used by people. Local knowledge and culture can therefore be considered as integral part of agrobiodiversity because it is the human activity of agriculture that shape and conserve this biodiversity. Another studies define agrobiodiversity as the richness of varieties, race, form of life, and genotypes. The presence of different habitat typologies, structural elements, for example, hedge, ponds, rock within an agro-ecosystem, as well as crops, and Also, ways to manage the landscape, that means culture. Another definition from GGR in 2008 says that agricultural biodiversity pertains to the biological variety exhibited among crops and livestock used for food and agriculture, as well as among organisms that constitute agricultural ecosystems. These diversities exist at ecosystem, species, and genetic levels, and is the result of thousands of years' worth of interaction among the natural environment, able genetic resource, and agricultural management systems, as well as technological innovations. So, agrobiodiversity is a small part of the huge biodiversity, and it constitutes, for example, of mixed agro-ecosystem, crop species and crops varieties, livestock species and fish species, plant-animal germplasm, soil organisms in cultivated area, biological agents for crops, livestock, pests, wild species and landrace or breedings, cultural and local knowledge of diversity. So to summarize, there are three levels of agrobiodiversity. Genetic diversity is the variety and variability of animal, plants, and microorganism populations. So diversity of genes that are used or related to food production and agriculture. Species diversity is the diversity of species that support production that can be divided in sole biota, pollinators, predators, and so on and so forth. And the species diversity in non-productive but associated. The third level, ecosystem diversity, is the diversity of our ecosystem and its role in the landscape. To clarify the key component of biodiversity, we divide the concept in two aspects. From one side, we have the planet biodiversity, that are the decisions taken by the farmer to manage the ecosystem. But the farm is placed in a natural surrounding that is so-called associated biodiversity, that is the result of the diversity of the environment, and both those diversity promotes agro-ecosystem functions. For example, adjusting of pests, recycling of nutrients, reduction of soil erosion, or regulating water cycle, the so-called environmental functions. From an old book, we can see that in this picture, there are a clear association between the diversity of a farm and the number of species that this farm can sustain and provide habitat for. If we simplify the system, also the number of species that are supported decrease until a very simplified system with basically homogeneous field, no animal, no integration between livestock and culture, very few trees, and the number of species are dramatically reduced, and this creates vulnerability. That's why there are many examples around the world that says us that agrobiodiversity losses in agriculture are dramatic. For example, in Bangladesh, in India, new rice varieties introduced by the Green Revolution caused almost the loss of 7,000 traditional varieties, and as well as fish species. The same we had in Philippines with rice variety, high yield variety of modern breeding that substitute 300 traditional varieties. The same in United States, I just said, related to the apples. And in Europe, we lost thousands of wheat varieties. that left space for the modern one. The extreme vulnerability associated to genetic homogeneity brings to loss of extreme vulnerability. So, for example, in Ireland, we had an heavy disease on potatoes in the half of 200 years ago. In France, during the 19th century, wine production was destroyed by Phylloxera. We all know this severe, very extremely damaging pest diffusion. But most recently, we can also observe the same effect. For example, in Costa Rica, the banana plantations were affected by Fusarium. In US, there was a big loss of hybrid corn production because of a disease. Or in Cuneo, in the place where I live some years ago, there was a huge bacteriosis on the clone of kiwi plantation that are diffused in that area. So finally, I would like to connect to this concept that diversity sustains resilience and the other way around. So resilience is also can be defined as the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, as well as the ability of a substance or an object, for example in physics, to spring back into shape. So it's related to elasticity. For example, a plastic bottle of water, if you push from outside with a pressure, then when you remove the pressure, the shape of the bottle go back to the original shape, if the plastic is enough elastic. In this graph, you find the explanation between the function of resilience in time. Just make an example that what is called functionality line could be the yield, for example, of a maize field. So we have a certain yield linked to that variety and to that environment, to that pedoclimatic condition through time. Then there is a negative event, an external disturbance, could be a dramatic drought, could be an invasive of a new pest or something else, and the black line drop down to a limiting factor. So the yield of that field dramatically decrease, and then there is the need of a certain time of unless the until the system go back to the original yield. Then there are so this is called the post-event action recovery process. So there are process. If the system is very resilient, we can observe the first line, this one. In this blue line, you see that it's very fast. In this other example, the system is not very much resilient, and there are even systems that after the negative event, due to mitigation strategies that maybe I can put in place even before the happening of the negative event, increase their yield after the external event that decrease the yield. So now the question is, what I can do in order to strengthen the resilience of a system, so basically to reduce the time needed to go back to the original shape. And second question, what could be the mitigation strategies of pre-event action in order to become more resilient system? So I leave you with these two questions for discussion that we will explore during our workshop on Thursday. I thank you very much for your attention and looking forward for seeing you on Thursday.